If it's my fault, then I can change. And that's where we start developing our wounded self. I'm not good enough. Who I am is defective, flawed. So I'm going to create a self that will be acceptable, that will give me control over getting love and avoiding pain and feeling safe. And so that decision that we make very young, that we're not good enough, and that it's our fault we're not being loved, is the basis of the wounded self. What I want to talk about today are the feelings of guilt and shame, which many people experience guilt and shame, and they often don't realize what's causing these feelings. Shame is the feeling we get when we believe that there's something basically intrinsically wrong with us, like I'm not good enough, or I'm bad, or I'm defective, or I'm unimportant, or something like that, some deep belief that there's something basically and essentially wrong with us. And guilt is the feeling that we've done something wrong. So they're different. Understand that shame is about feeling we're intrinsically not good enough in some way or bad. And guilt is that we've done something wrong. Now, there's two kinds of guilt and shame. There's healthy shame and there's toxic shame. And there's healthy guilt and toxic guilt. Healthy shame is what we feel when we've actually maybe deliberately set out to hurt somebody. Hopefully you feel shame when you do that. If you don't, then that's a sign of sociopathy. Sociopaths don't feel shame. They can hurt people without any feeling at all of guilt or shame. They are shameless people. They can just act out in any way they want, and they don't feel anything bad about it. They're not capable of it. There's actually part of their brain missing, and they're unable to feel that. But the rest of us, and I'm sure everybody who's on the call, will feel shame when you've acted out in a way that's truly harmful to other people, especially if you've done it on purpose, because sometimes we do. We're human, and sometimes we do, and that shame is appropriate. We want to go in, we want to understand, learn from it so that we don't do it again. And healthy guilt is similar. Like you've actually behaved in a way, perhaps not deliberately, but you've behaved in a way that's been hurtful to others. And so we want those feelings. They're important feelings. They're informing us that we're off track in how we're being in our behavior. But then, and this is what I really want to address, is toxic guilt and shame. Toxic shame comes from telling yourself that you're essentially bad. And this is a false belief. You're essentially unimportant. You're essentially defective. You're not good enough. That is toxic shame, because that is a lie. And one of the reasons it's so hard to move through toxic shame and let go of that lie is that for most of us, we absorbed this when we were very young, that it's our fault that we're not being loved. If you weren't loved in your family, you had to find a reason why. And either you were absolutely brilliant and you recognized that your parents didn't know how to love you, which very few people ever get. I certainly didn't. Or you think it's your fault. I'm not being loved because there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough to be loved. I'm not worthy of love. I'm defective. I'm not important. I shouldn't even be here. That's toxic shame. But we absorb that belief when we're very young because it gives us a sense of control. This is very important to understand, that telling yourself it's your fault that you're not being loved gives you a sense of control. Because if it's my fault, then I can change. And that's where we start developing our wounded self. I'm not good enough. Who I am is defective, flawed. So I'm going to create a self that will be acceptable, that will give me control over getting love and avoiding pain and feeling safe. And so that decision that we make very young, that we're not good enough, and that it's our fault we're not being loved, is the basis of the wounded self. That's where we start that. That's the core shame belief of the wounded self that gives us a sense of control. I can change. I can be different. I can be this way. I can be that way. I can be nice. I can be brilliant. And then I'll have control over getting the love I need and avoiding the pain I can't handle. So this is what makes it hard to let go of toxic shame. You have to be willing to let go of control. You have to be willing now as an adult to accept that you don't actually have control over whether people are loving or unloving. You never did. You had no control over your parents. They were loving or unloving of their own accord, not because of you. And it's true today. We do not control whether people are open or closed, whether their intention is to learn or control, whether they're kind or mean. We don't control that. We don't cause it. Think about yourself. You decide that for yourself. Nobody causes you to be loving or unloving, kind or mean. Nobody causes you to do that. You might want to think somebody does, but they don't. We make that choice all by ourselves, and so do others. And so in order to move beyond toxic shame, in order to heal it, you have to be willing to let go of the false belief that you can control how people are with you, how they treat you, how they feel about you. And when you're really willing to let go of control over that, you'll be amazed at how fast your toxic shame goes away, that false belief that you're not good enough. That's about toxic shame. Toxic guilt is similar, but it's about not that you are a bad human being, but that you've done something wrong. And a good example is something that I run into all the time with my clients. Let's say that somebody is having a conversation with their mother, and their mother is a narcissist, and their mother is constantly guilting them. Oh, why haven't you called me? You hardly ever call me. I'm so alone. Nobody is here for me, and on about the complaints. And you're being blamed for it because you're not there enough, and you haven't called enough, and you're not taking care of her enough. And you get off the phone and you feel guilt. And the guilt is coming from a false belief that you are responsible for the other person's feelings, like you're responsible for your mother's feelings. It's your fault she's feeling that way. But it's not. That, again, is a lie. She's feeling that way because she's abandoning herself. That's what she learned to do. She learned to be a victim. She learned to blame other people. And so her pain is coming from self-abandonment, but then she's dumping it on you. And you end up judging yourself. I'm not a good enough son, or I'm not a good enough daughter, or I should be doing more for my mother. And all of that creates toxic guilt. And so it becomes very important when you feel guilt or shame to go inside and see if it's coming from your wounded self. If your wounded self is judging you as not being good enough or having done something wrong. Now, like I said, yes, we want to feel guilt if we've actually done something wrong. That's important, to be able to feel guilt when we've actually done something wrong. And when that's the case, we feel remorse, we learn from it, and we try not to do it again. But with toxic guilt, we don't learn anything. We might feel some regret, but then we do it over and over, like not call your mother or drink too much or whatever it is, and then feel bad and feel sorry and feel guilty, but do it again, do it again, do it again. So these are important feelings. They're important feelings when you feel guilt or shame, to go in and get the information that they're giving you, that either you're lying to yourself and feeling toxic shame or guilt, or this is something you need to really learn from. That shame is appropriate, that guilt is appropriate, and you want to learn what you've done that is not serving you well, that's not loving to you, it's not loving to others, and to learn from it so that you don't keep repeating it. Healthy guilt and healthy shame leads us to not keep repeating behaviors that are unloving to us and unloving to others. toxic guilt and shame keeps us locked into trying to control from our wounded self. So it's really important to be able to learn to differentiate the difference, to tune into the lies or tune into the actual behavior that we need to change so we're not hurting ourselves and hurting others. This week's episode is brought to you by the Inner Bonding Masterclass. When you join this membership, you'll be part of a compassionate and supportive community who understands what you're going through and who will help you throughout your healing journey.